Thank you and good afternoon. Let me say to the Board of Trustees, distinguished faculty, students, staff, alumni, and friends of Williams College, I have been looking forward to this day for some time, and I know my many friends from Brown who are here who've come up to cheer Maud on are just as excited and happy as I am. I am very glad to be here on this magnificent campus as you inaugurate my colleague, my friend, forever a friend of Brown University, Maud Mandel, to be your 18th president. I want to thank Michael and his colleagues on the board for the opportunity to say a few words today and for their infinite wisdom. You have made an inspired choice. Maud will touch individual lives and steward the intellectual traditions and fabric of this celebrated college, and if I may say so, she wears purple very well. I'm humbled and grateful to have been selected to receive an honorary degree from Williams College. After having conferred so many honorary degrees over my last 6 years, it's great to be on the receiving end. And it confirms that there really is no downside to being overeducated. This is a historic and special day for Williams, and it's one that will generate joy and hope long after the sun sets this evening. But it does come at a tumultuous time in this country. Divisions persist around issues of race and identity and equity and free expression and the value of science and claims on truth. And as always, this turbulence is reflected on college and university campuses across the country. In this context, it's very reasonable to ask why anyone would want to be a college president. A demanding 24/7 job in the crosshairs of so many divisive issues. It's not too late to change your mind. Just joking, no. I'm going to attempt to answer that question today, and I'll begin by going back in time just a little bit. I think few here will have forgotten what transpired on the University of Virginia campus in Charlottesville just a little bit more than a year ago. The hateful, violent expressions of neo-Nazism and white supremacy that we all witnessed were deeply disturbing. They were contrary to human decency. And in the aftermath of that event, I knew that we had to bring the Brown campus together to reflect on the meaning of what had happened. During the first week of classes a year ago, we invited 7 faculty members to examine the complex history of white nationalism in America, how it came to be, why it's persisted, how we might counter it. And I knew that Maud Mandel had to be part of that group. When Maud spoke, she bridged past and present by drawing on her scholarship on anti-Semitism in Europe in the 1920s and 30s, and centered on the concept of social death. What preceded full-blown genocide, she said, was social death, when neighbors turned on neighbors, boycotted their shops, and looked away when people they had long known were assaulted in the street. Jews experienced this social death. They were turned into outsiders. Among the lessons of the history of anti-Semitism, Maud concluded, is the call on all of us to disavow the turning away that leads to social death, because we're all implicated in making sure that the society in which we live in is socially just. The panel was powerful, and it prompted the kind of hard, emotionally fraught, and intellectually intense conversations that just clarified the value and purpose of higher education, especially during difficult times. And I was reminded of what members of the Brown's 50th reunion classes often tell me about being students in the 1960s, a time of convulsive social upheaval, that their college experience had another weightier layer of real-time learning that enriched their classes and drove their decisions about their lives. The stakes seemed very high. Now as then, there's an edginess about the time. And it's telling that Maud Mandel is rising to the challenge, meeting it head on with her signature intellect and humility and joy. It's equally telling that Maud will do so here at Williams, a place that, like Brown, has always welcomed difficult conversations. Our histories are distinct, but they follow a common trajectory. Both institutions champion liberal founding values that have stood the test of time for generations. And both institutions experienced watershed moments that profoundly changed them, many by grappling with what it means for some people to be inside while others are outside. If you know your Williams College history, you know about John Aubrey Davis, class of '33. He organized a boycott of a white-owned hamburger grill that fired its black employees so it could hire white replacements. And he later served along Thurgood Marshall in crafting the Brown v. Board education decision. One example. If you know your Brown University history, you know about Brown student James Talmadge, who had the audacity to call for the abolition of slavery at the university's commencement ceremony in 1790, a time when some members of the Brown University Corporation in attendance still owned slaves. At Williams and Brown, it's expected that we approach complex and difficult issues with knowledge and understanding. So it may not be surprising that Maud's arrival at Williams is not the first intellectual link between our two institutions. In fact, we've both benefited by attracting each other's graduates as professors. Consider Liz Hoover, Williams class of 2001, now Manning Assistant Professor of American Studies at Brown, and somebody we're very fortunate to have. For decades, Native Americans have been regarded as the other, living outside the larger society, on reservations rife with poverty and crime and chronic health issues. While there are sobering realities to that narrative of Native life, it's decidedly incomplete. It overlooks the cultural resilience that Native communities marshal in the face of systemic neglect and discrimination. And this is exactly what Liz Hoover explores in her own work. In her powerful book, The River is in Us, Liz tells the story of the Akwesasne, an upstate New York Mohawk community about 250 miles north of here, downwind and downstream of 3 Superfund sites. In researching public health problems linked to polluted air and water, Liz collaborated with a Mohawk midwife who wanted to learn whether it was safe for Akwesasne mothers to breastfeed their babies while eating traditional food, fish from the St. Lawrence River, known to be contaminated with PCBs from the Superfund sites. The midwife convinced external researchers to study the breast milk of tribal women, but she also insisted that the women not simply be subjects of the study, but participants who would be trained to collect biological samples. The result? Engaging the citizens of Akwesasne to be agents of change sparked an environmental justice movement. Members of the community gained valuable public health skills. Scientists collaborated with the tribe in ways that protected people's health and preserved culture. And a model for more inclusive, community-based research emerged from the work. Then consider Neil Roberts, Mellon Mays Fellow and Brown class of 1998, now Associate Professor of Africana Studies at Williams. He touts the historical importance of agency as an animating force, both in the lives of slaves and in the actions of their descendants in the long struggle for civil rights. In his research on the contributions of Frederick Douglass to political thought, Neil cites his enduring worldview. He credits Douglass, for example, with expanding the notion of individual potential by arguing that the America he knew called on citizens to improve not only their own lives, but the lives of members of their communities. On a podcast promoting his recently published edited volume, A Political Companion to Frederick Douglass, he talks about how the Black Lives Matter movement embodies what Douglass called, quote, the spirit of rational hopefulness. To his way of thinking, every person in a democracy has the innate ability and obligation to act. And against today's divisive backdrop, this spirit prompts acts of rehumanization instead of silence, negativity, or denigration of others. This is the opposite of social death. As Frederick Douglass observed in an 1889 speech, the beauty of today is to meet the questions of today with intelligence and courage. In their work, both of these scholars probed the notion of active citizenship, in particular the urgency and the agency of claiming it when it's denied. And in doing so, they demonstrate a value that both Brown and Williams hold dear, that the power of knowledge resides in how it helps us develop informed convictions that drive principled actions that repair the world to bridge outside and inside. And this brings us back here to this moment, to the inauguration of Maud Mandel as president of Williams College. Many of you, I suspect, have read this wonderful piece about Maud in Williams Magazine, your alumni publication. I loved reading it. In it, Maud reflects on meaningful moments in her life, most notably befriending a community of Armenian refugees while studying abroad in France, and learning about her maternal grandfather, a Holocaust survivor who was imprisoned at Dachau during Kristallnacht. And it should surprise exactly nobody that these moments left a mark. Among Maud's most compelling qualities as a person and as an educator is her deep reservoir of compassion for those in diaspora, in conflict, or somehow outside the human embrace because of who they are. In the Williams Magazine piece, Maud revealed her cards with all of the authenticity that endeared her to us at Brown, noting, quote, "I find people fascinating, and the communities and college campuses that we build together are such a fascinating mix of diverse peoples who are trying to figure out how to live together, work together, and most importantly, learn together." And that's as it should be. University campuses will always be in the vanguard during times of profound social change because the expansion of knowledge goes on. Ways of learning and knowing blossom, nurtured by the diverse and sometimes searing experiences of people who've been on the outside. And therein lies a kernel of truth about the future of higher education and about Maud Mandel's place in leading us there. As we ask what it means to educate the college students of today and tomorrow, I believe that somewhere in the mix of worthy educational outcomes is to be an engaged citizen. More than ever, higher education must prepare students to not just acquire knowledge, but to apply it in ways that elevate the public good, restore civic discourse, bring out the best in others. Last spring, our Swearer Center for Public Service launched the Higher Education and Democratic Practice Initiative, which aims to broaden students' understanding of democracy. It's continuing this year. This was, of course, an idea hatched by Maud Mandel. She sees the value of informed debate among people with different views and of understanding principles like the rule of law and ethical governance. These are among the ways that people are brought inside. So let me conclude by saying that for nearly 20 years, Maud Mandel, as an esteemed member of the faculty and a beloved dean of the college, embodied the intellectual independence and the fierce social conscience that has long animated Brown University. And as all of you will come to know, if you don't already, Maud Mandel embodies the intellectual energy and the spirited can-do culture that has long animated Williams College. Under her thoughtful guidance and a spirit of great collegiality, and yes, a spirit of great fun, Williams will continue to thrive even in times of tumult and change. So it may indeed be a fraught moment to be a college president, but no one on the planet is as prepared and perfectly attuned to take on this role as Maud Mandel. And for Williams, it's the perfect time to have Maud at its helm. Thank you very much.